that idea that, that your education or what interests you or what motivates you, what you do and what I've struggled with at times, more so at different times, but in my last two specials, a little more than the one before that, is integrating these ideas into comedy that people can understand. I mean, your Tracy Morgan joke on the last special about him telling you, you're too smart, and, what would be hilarious is if a guy that looked like you and sounded like you said, I was licking my girlfriend's asshole or whatever.
Which he's right, by the way. Objectively, that would be effective. That
but we do it. You do it. I mean, it's like, you're the smart guy, but, you also, your appreciation for the comics that you appreciate enable you, to be filthy, in a moment that in a selective way that doesn't, you're not a filthy comic, but you know how to use the device confidently, even though you call yourself out on it, which bothered me. But you can.
Why did it bother you?
It's a little bit of a wuss move, I thought. Just jerk off. You're okay. You can just jerk off. Just jerk off.
Are you kidding me? To me, that wasn't a wuss move. That's me, because, I'm the biggest comedic influence in my life outside of Margaret Cho that made me want to do stand-up when I was 15, and Paul Mooney, who told me that, who showed me that you can make people uncomfortable, is Stuart Lee. I'm obsessed with Stuart Lee stuff.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, I remember you being obsessed with
I'm
Stuart.
The one who kept telling you should interview Stuart Lee,
and I gave you all to him. Yeah.
And I got you. You remember you emailed me, and I gave you all this info on him and clips to listen to. I'm such a huge fan of him and his ethos, and he's one of those guys who's oh, there are no rules. Whenever comics, when people were going after Hannah Gatsby and saying it's not stand-up, it doesn't count as stand-up, and it's where does this purest nature of stand-up come from when it's it's the lowest production values, it's a person, a microphone, it can be anything you want it to be. I've known comics who've performed on pool tables and without mics.
I've
no
done
rules.
That. Sure. No, but I think that came with, ultimately what happened with alt comedy and the sort of, I think, the produced show movement, and then with TED Talks, is that comics felt like they were losing turf. That, we paid our dues in this particular context, and now there are these infiltrators. So I think the purest mode comes from the old idea of dues paying and club work. And then, they sort of judge on those lines. I think it's that simple.
That doesn't work anymore.
Of course.
Especially you people are complaining that.
That said, though, I did pay my dues, and
you did pay your dues. Yes, I have audio evidence of you talking about paying your dues, actually, and how Dane Cook had not.
Yeah. And I was only halfway through the dues. I hadn't even hit the hard part of the dues when you talked to me. But what I'm saying is that you do honor your education by doing the kind of shit that you do. And at what point did you realize you could do that? What joke was the turning point for you where you realized, this is a political joke, it's effective, it makes people look at what they take for granted differently, and it opened a window? Because usually which moment.
There's two bits. One of them was this joke about the Kohinoor diamond, which is the diamond that the British stole from India in probably the 1700s, maybe.
Right.
And how it's one of the British crown jewels, and it's on one of their crowns. And it was a bit about reading I haven't done it in forever, but a museum exhibit that says that it was found in India in the 1700s. It was found there. It wasn't taken from India. It was found because we were just eating them. We didn't know what they were. We were making diamond biryani till the British showed up, and they taught us how to use our opposable thumbs, and they took those diamonds away. So there was a bit I did about that was okay, this is about colonialism. It has a bit of anger, which I think I had to learn gradually that anger was the place that I guess my comedy comes from the most,
I think that's why you and I might have had tension, and what I saw in you that I related to and resented, or that the thing we had in common. Yeah,
I think you and Lewis Black, especially Lewis Black, because Lewis Black screams.
But he's cartoon-like. He's figured out how to do it.
Right. But I definitely think that release of anger and frustration as funny. I think you definitely were influenced me, particularly that first record, which I listened to obsessively. Like I was Not Sold Out, right?
Oh, the 9/11 record?
That one right out? Yeah. Where you I remember you opened by talking about how you had a cold sore.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's Not Sold Out, and that has the bit about thinking that the FBI is watching me. That I want to see my file.
Yeah, that's my favorite joke on it. Where you,
right?
Where you,
nope, napping, masturbating again. Now he's sleeping, crying now. Yeah,
crying for no reason.
Yeah,
There's a few bits on. I think the bit on there that. I think for me had the most impact, and for a lot of awful reasons, but was the one where you talk about suicide and where you say, have you ever gotten so depressed how you think about suicide not because you actually want to do it?
It makes me, makes you feel better.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just, like I still kind of talk about that joke. Like I don't want to do it, but it just makes me feel better knowing I can if I have to.
Yeah. Oh, that thing stayed in my psyche probably way too long. Because I think
it's still in mine.
I mean, there is a part of me, I will say, before the kid that saw the end of the world in the same way.
Right.
Like a nuclear annihilation or this thing. Oh, thank God this whole thing's over. Like there's that relief in the same way as an individual.
It's going to be quick for everybody.
Oh, thank God. We're finally we're all in it together for the first time.
Yeah.
We're done. Which all of a sudden feels different having a kid. It's like, well, I want him to at least experience something.
I want him to at least experience the horrible authoritarian racist culture that he's going to be growing up
in. And ice cream.
Yeah. So the first kind of aware bits were about colonialism, which oddly to me,
yes,
was something I didn't even take. I only recently took into consideration because of a trip to London where I realized that the people of color experience in Europe is completely different than America. But I was not educated that way. But I went to an art exhibit at the gallery. I can't remember the Hayward, and it was all a reflection on colonialism, and all of a sudden my mind just blew about that. Like I'm a 57-year-old man who's relatively progressive and fairly open-minded, but I never really kind of absorbed the idea and result of colonialism properly because I didn't grow up in it and I didn't study it.
I mean, my parents speak English. Do you know what I mean? And there's English is still one of the official languages of India.
Right.
Like it's also the administrative language in addition to Hindi. So, I mean, it's certainly, it's very strange being in a colonized country coming from, whose family came from a place that was colonized. There's something weird about, we got them to leave, and now we're going to another place they went and they took over. I mean, we're all look, I'm benefiting from it, too, by being here and living off this land. I'm also, I have caste privileges, a lot of this, the Indian people that are in this country, they came from upper classes, especially that first wave with visas. I mean, they were brought to this country, with educations to get more educations to support the U.S. economy. And they come from upper caste backgrounds.
How'd your parents come?
My dad's sister, my aunt, came. I think she's a nurse. So her and her husband, who's a doctor, moved to Kansas, then brought my uncle and my dad, and sponsored them. And then my dad eventually moves to New York
from Kansas.
He spent his first year in Independence, Kansas, which is a very small town, where he was once asked if he was Chinese because nobody knew what to make of him. But then he moves to New York, lives with some friends there, and then eventually my mom and him got married, an arranged marriage in 1981, and then my mom comes over.
So it was arranged back home.
Back home, yeah. My mom, it was interesting because my mom, I mean, I think it speaks a lot to my mom's really unique experience is that she was a doctor as a South Indian, which is very conservative, South Indian woman, in her late 20s with her own practice. She never learned to cook. She never had to do any of the domestic things that a lot of young Indian women, especially of that time, are taught to do, and how marriage is ultimately the goal. My mom had her own thing, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's told me I love you and your brother, but if I never gotten married, I'd be fine being a spinster reading books for the rest of my life. Like that would have been fine too. So, I think she actually, took the biggest hit. Like to me, both my parents' stories are really interesting, but I think my mom's sacrifice to me, that's like the real story.
If she wanted to be a doctor here, she would have had to go to medical school again.
She had to take an exam, and it wouldn't have been automatic. It didn't automatically transfer over. I don't know what the rules are now. And between raising 2 kids and my dad, so technically 3 kids, it was difficult.
Well, I think. Yeah, your dad gets sort of like he takes a couple hits in the special too, and my parents always take hits. But like, having seen, like the idea of an arranged marriage, I think to me and to a lot of people is sort of like, well, that sounds horrendous. And how do you remain committed to that, when they didn't have to do that in this country?
Right. I mean, one, I think that it's not always terrible. There's enough stories of arranged marriages that work out, and it's a lifetime of I learned to love someone, and this is an incredible partnership I've shared with some person. There's also, this is a terrible marriage, and thank God I got out. And then there's the I'm in it because of the social and societal pressure to stay. And at a certain point, you have to accept that they were figuring things out too. And I think my dad certainly was falling in line with what he expected, a wife to be. And my mom, was falling in line with what she was told that she had to be.
But secretly, she knew otherwise, and eventually,
my mom's a brilliant woman. Yeah. She again had her own practice in a small town in Andhra Pradesh, southern India. Like her life was so different than the life she's lived in 40 plus years since, and 40 years since. So I think that there's lots of stories, and I think a lot of women have these stories. It's not just South Asian women, it's not just Indian women. There's a lot of women that have stories of expectations ruining or affecting the course they were on and changing, what they expected. There's a lot of tragic stories like that. There's a ton of women.
They all have them.
That.
Yeah. Well,
so we certainly have our share, and I think my mom certainly is incredibly forward-thinking and thoughtful, brilliant woman, and is beloved by people who meet her. And at the same time, I think she's this idea of duty and what is your duty as a woman. That stuff's ingrained, man. That doesn't go away.
Wired in.
And that's not, again, I just want to reinforce, that's not just various Indian cultures. I mean, that's everywhere, and that's just how it looks in our scenario, in our context.
So is your brother still in the band?
No, that band broke up 8 years ago.
What's he doing?
A lot of things. He's been, I think he's sold something to Spotify. He has the
band was Das Racist?
Das Racist, yeah. He was the hype man, Dapwell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's still in the music racket?
Nah, not really. I mean, he DJs a show called Chillin' Island, and he does his own thing, but he doesn't play music. He never played music,
Right.
So
it sounds like he's still in the area.
Yeah, and we're developing our own things together, and we're pitching things together.
Are you?
Yeah, which is always a dream thing. I've always wanted to work with my brother. He's my best friend, and he's definitely the smartest and most creative person I know. So
that's nice.
Yeah. No, I think we as a team have always been kind of I think the other thing I keep trying to figure out what it is about, our dynamic, me and you. It's also the thing of having to accept, and I think, I think maybe Stuart Lee made it easier for us in the sense that, he told me, when I talked to him, but we had to accept that we're not for everybody, and that's a benefit. And that there's nothing we can do to be for anybody. Not that we want to, but it's not even available to us as an option. Yeah. Yes.
Because secretly, when you think about other people's success or the size of other people's success, or why can't what I say be as entertaining and as far-reaching as that other motherfucker, there is part of your brain that does that, but then you realize, it's never going to be.
Oh, I had to put that away a long time ago. We've all gone through that, right? Where you start comparing yourself to your peers, or how come I don't have that? You know,
well, yeah, I still get that sometimes, but I'm talking specifically about.
You still get that?
Sure.
Really?
A little bit. Well, sometimes because I see myself a certain way, right? Like if I look at my last special, I'm like, I'm not going to get better than that. I'm not going to get